Hi guys, so I'm here today just to kind of show you our curriculum and what we'll be doing throughout kind of every day and throughout our whole year this year with our pre-K class. So the curriculum that we have in our program is Learning Without Tears. So with that curriculum, we learn our letters not in the alphabetical order that we're used to, but we start with our letters that for example, L, F, E, and H kind of come first because we start with our letters that are straight lines first. It's easier for them to learn how to write straight lines before they learn how to do their curves and their diagonals. So we learn them in the developmental order that they learn to write them versus the alphabetical order that we're kind of used to teaching, I guess. So that's the curriculum order that we see. So when you see these letters coming home, that's kind of the rhyme or reason to the order that we're going with. This year's a little different. We do have two different age groups in my class this year. So I have an older group and a younger group. So the curriculum that I have is going to be similar. However, I have adjusted it to kind of be age and developmentally appropriate for both groups. So everything that we'll be doing, I kind of have different tweaks and ways to make it work for everybody. So I say that one of the biggest things we're working on in this class, they may have been exposed to it last year in Tracy's class, is letters and their sounds. So we want to be able to correlate the two together. Also talk about different words and match them with the sounds that they belong to. And then from there we turn that into sight words. We spend a lot of time working on sight words. We have our sight word wall. We'll teach the sight words that correlate with the letters that we're learning that week. So for example, the week we learned L, you probably saw worksheets and handouts go home with the word little, like, love, words like that. So those words are just the most exposed words that are in books and things like that at their level. So that kind of makes it easier for them to learn to read once they do go off to kindergarten, first, second grade. They're the most commonly used words in books, so it kind of makes it easier for them to learn to read because they can identify a lot of the words that are in their books already. So we do expose them to them, and they are on our assessments that we do, but they're not super stressed. I know a lot of people freak out, oh my gosh, my kids don't know every single sight word. It's okay because we work on exposure and we do work on them a lot. However, they're not actually required for the kids to know until they're at the end of kindergarten. So really, if they know them now, they're kind of have a head start for kindergarten. And then we also have various math concepts that we work on in this class as well throughout the year. So I'll go kind of over the bullet points from our assessments. So we do assess the kids twice a year, in January and in June. So I'll kind of just go over the bullet points of the assessment. This is the assessment for the older kids. A few of the kids who are in the younger group will be on the Room 2 assessment that they have with the 3-year-olds, so depending on where they're at. So this assessment has capital letters and their correlating sounds, and then the next section is the lowercase letters. So we do work on both of those here. And then we have the describe and compare section, so it's just learning. For example, it says if an elephant's bird, oh my goodness, sorry. The elephant is big, the bird is small, so kind of being able to compare things. And then we practice rhyming and concepts like that, and syllables, and then blending words. That's kind of something we work on throughout the year a little bit. We expose it with our sight words when we're learning to kind of recognize them. For example, with the word little, I might say, we know it's not going to be the word for because it starts with an L. L says L. And then I is I, so little. Kind of breaking down the letters from there. So we just kind of work on blending all the sounds to kind of eventually create words. That is a little harder of a concept. Throughout the year they will be exposed to it. Hopefully by the end of the year they can do it. But again, it's something that's more stressed in kindergarten. But the next section on here is the numbers and math. So we of course have our shapes on here. And then we express concepts such as counting by tens. And then of course, being able to identify all the numbers. So we just do the numbers at 1 through 10 here. And then I think as they go to kindergarten, they will be assessed on higher numbers, I believe. But we do expose them to higher numbers as well. And then a big thing is object counting. So being able to, sometimes we'll use the bears or various objects and being able to count the objects correctly versus just pointing to them and not having the numbers match what they're pointing to, if that makes sense. And then we kind of have a little bit of beginning addition where if I have 5 ladybugs and now I have 2 ladybugs, now how many ladybugs are there altogether? There might be 7. And then the next section we talk about in math is first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place. So a lot of the times I'll use cars or I'll use bears or different activities to kind of pretend they're racing and see who's in first place, second, third, things like that. And then we also compare sizes of different objects, so bigger and smaller, and object correlation. And then we also work on patterns. So a lot of the times we'll use various objects such as these counting cubes are really good for that. Just an A-B pattern is simple, just like, for example, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. But I do find that is easy for a kid sometimes, and so a lot of the times we can actually challenge them to do various different patterns as they progress throughout the year. And then we also have our sight words on the back of this assessment. Again, we expose them and we work on them quite a bit. However, if they don't know them, yes, work on them at home if you can, if they're excited about it, but at the same time, keep in mind that they're only required to know by the end of kindergarten, so it is okay if they need, if they aren't super into it and aren't having the best of luck. And then I do have this assessment for my younger group. Similar concepts, but we just do capital letters instead of both capital and lowercase. We still assess 1 through 10. How high can they count? Our shapes, and then we practice tracing and drawing some line circles, triangle shapes, and things like that. So I guess the advantage they have with me is they're a little exposed to more. Again, they're still assessing the same as all 3-year-olds, but because they are the little higher 3-year-olds who should be 4 soon, they're being exposed to a lot more. So I think that actually gives them a little bit of an advantage, because that way when they have me again next year, they'll be just ahead of the game. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my craft books. So we do have these craft books that go home at the end of the year at graduation. So we do crafts in my class at least once a week. The kids love doing them. They look forward to it every week. But you might not always see them. They might not always go home. You can see I hang them up to decorate the classroom. So some of them are kept to create craft book pages. For example, this one here, I don't know if you can see that. We keep them to make a craft book that goes home at graduation. Some of them will go home, like this pumpkin will probably end up going home. So they'll get to keep some, but then some I'll keep. So don't be discouraged if you're not seeing as many. You'll still get some, but I do keep quite a few for their memory scrapbook when they go home with graduation. And then quickly, I just wanted to kind of review our daily schedule. So my class this year, our schedule starts with free play from 9 to 9:30 every day. So I think that's a super important time. I know we really want to try to get here by 9 o'clock if we can, because I know sometimes it just seems like, oh, it's just free play. But I think that sometimes the kids' most favorite time of day, because they get to play with any toy in the class that they want to. They get to play with their favorite friend. They get to get all their energy out before it's time to sit down and start learning and focusing on various concepts. So I think that's a super important time of day. So if we can all try to get here by 9 so that we can have that free time for them, I think that would be amazing. Then we move on to small group. So small group is something that we do where sometimes half of them will be with me doing a concept where we're either writing in our Handing Our Tears book, we're learning our patterns, we're doing a worksheet, we're doing a handout, something like that. While the other half could be doing music with Miss Vanessa. They could be sitting at another table doing an independent activity. But that way it kind of gives me a little more one-on-one time with the kids to help them with these concepts, and that way they can get a little more out of it. From there we have snack, and then we have a whole group setting, so the whole class sits together. We might go over our calendar, read a story, talk about what happened in the story, who, what, where, when, why, all the W questions. And then we'll talk about our letter of the week and our sight words for the week, and practice. We always kind of pretend to draw the letters in the air and what sounds, what words start with those letters. So that's a really important time of the day as well. Then we'll move on to iPads. The kids love their iPads. That's kind of their favorite time, one of their favorite things that they get to do throughout the day. Sometimes it's used as an incentive throughout the day. But all the games that we have on our iPads are academic, and I promise they're not just like messing around on YouTube. We keep an eye on them. Then from there we go outside, so they get to go get their energy out, run around on the playground. And then we have another small group right before lunch, or before Bible, and then we'll have lunchtime. So yeah, that's kind of how it works from day to day. But then if you guys kind of want to see all the items I have on the table, these are kind of different things that we'll use throughout the days or weeks or throughout the school year to touch on these various concepts. So these books that I have here are the different Handwriting Without Tears workbooks that go with our curriculum. So they do go in the order that we're learning the letters. So if I can get to the letters, see, we start with L, then F and E. The straight lines come first. We do the curves and diagonals after. So we do have 3 different levels of this book. So if the first time they're doing this book, they will have the green one. The majority of the kids in my class do have the purple one. And then, for example, some of the second time pre-K kids, some of the kids that are in the younger group now may have this one, or some of them have this depending on their level or their age. This is for if they've already done both of these two. We also have the orange one as an option as well. And just an example of how I keep it developmentally appropriate for the younger group and the older group. The younger group might use this book to trace their letters, and then the older group might use this one to trace first their letters, and then they'll write them after they're done. And then if they've already mastered that, we have this book where they don't get to trace them at all. They just have to practice writing them. So it's kind of the different baby steps to learn to writing all the letters on their own. And then these are just different things that I might use during a whole group. This is what my sight words look like. They're all on magnets, so they stick on my sight word wall. Here's some different letter cards that we use for identification. We also have our lowercase. These ones are really cool because you can touch them and they're like, teach them to practice tracing their letters because it's like sandpapery. And then these are little books that we'll kind of get through as we get later throughout the year. They're kind of early reader books, so it's a mixture of sight words and just picture identification that helps them learn to read as they progress. These are super fun. Sometimes we'll do them as a class. Sometimes if a certain child is progressing quickly and I feel they're ready for the challenge, we'll pull them out and kind of get to sit together and do that during a small group. These books are similar. And then I have these that are super great for helping the kids learn to write their names or trace their names depending on the level they're in or the level they're at. Right now that has been a big focus. I'm sure you've seen lots of worksheets go home with their name on them. We're spending a lot of time right now learning to write our name. And then here's some other activities that I do quite frequently at small group. We do trace our calendar once a month. So this varies from child to child. Some of them will trace the letters because I'll write them in like or trace the numbers because I'll write them in a highlighter. Others can just write them on their own, or you can see the progression throughout the year if you save them all. And then these are really good for sight word identification. The kids love these because we use like the dot markers, which is one of their favorite things to use, or one of their favorite tools to use. So they'll just dot the different, find the word here, and they'll find the word all over the place and dot it. And then this is good for their fine motor to learn to write the word, trace the word. They get to use this one. I let them use some paint and use Q-tips to practice dotting the word. So that's all really good stuff to help them with identification. I also have similar worksheets for the younger group if they're kind of struggling a little bit and we're still learning our letters, we're still learning our sounds. I do have various worksheets for them as well. And then here's some various math activities I have. These bears I use quite frequently for if we're learning our patterns or we're learning first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or even if something like sorting or counting. These are really good for all of those concepts. I use these bears like probably every week for something different. And then we have our magnet shapes. The kids love these. We can work on our shape recognition and also talking about how, 2 semicircles make a circle. We can use these on the whiteboard because they're magnetic. And then here's some different flashcards. We have our number cards. The kids love these because they're Pete the Cat cards, just like the letters over here. The counting cubes are really good for patterns and counting, and again, how we talked about being able to point and count correctly versus just pointing and not having the numbers match what you're pointing to. And then these are really good for their fine motor because they get to practice like stringing the beads and also being able to correlate various concepts at the same time because they can string the beads while making a pattern. And it's like, that is a little more challenging than just using the bears or the counting cubes because they have to think about more than one thing at more than one concept at the same time, whether they're realizing it or not. And then quickly, I just wanted to touch on the behavior chart. I don't know if you guys have heard about our green and yellow cards. So you can show it if you want. Yeah, so that is the behavior chart we have in my class. So we do go over that. The kids all kind of know if they got a yellow card, they're in trouble. So that's just something I wanted to touch on quickly. So I try not to use it super often. However, sometimes it is necessary. a lot of the times, but don't it's not a huge deal, super freak out. If they do get a yellow card, that's something we ask that you follow up with a consequence at home, talk to the child. But typically that's something I will do if they hurt another child, it's going to be an automatic yellow, maybe even red cards. I've never given one the entire time I've been here. That's typically if someone does something very serious, and at that point you guys would be called and they'd be sent home. So I don't expect that to happen. I have a good group of kids this year. But the yellow cards, or sometimes it's just something as simple as I've told you to sit down, I've told you to sit down, I've told you to stop, I've told you to stop, I've told you to stop. Nothing's working, or I've given you a timeout already and I've already tried every trick in the book, then I have to have you pull your card. I have to talk to your parents because we're having a hard time. Something as simple as that. It's not always a huge deal, but sometimes it is if somebody hurt another friend or someone's not, along those lines. It's just kind of another incentive to help them behave, I guess. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to talk to me. I try not to use it too often, but sometimes there are those days or those moments where nothing else seems to work, so then we have to pull the yellow card out. But then I also try to allow them to turn it back to green, because sometimes that helps them turn their day around, because we hate to see kids have a green, or their card turns to yellow and then they think, oh well, it doesn't matter how I behave today, I can do whatever I want. So we try to prevent that from happening. So I do sometimes let them have that incentive to turn it back to green if they can turn their day around and have better behavior. And then I think that's it. So if you guys have any questions or anything, or have any questions about any concepts or the behavior chart or anything at all, you guys can feel free to message me on Brightwheel. And if you would like more time than just a message on Brightwheel, feel free to set up a time for a phone call with me. I can be happy to go over any of this with you. But thank you so much.